Gaming would be nothing without the controllers we use to play them. While a great controller doesn't necessarily make a game or console great, it's hard to imagine playing some of your favorite games of all time without thinking about the controller you played them on. It was difficult to rank these due to everyone's preferences being so different, so this list will be based on comfortability, functionality, but above all, how well the controller complements and improves the games it was designed for. So in person and with no script, here are the top 10 video game controllers.
Number 10.
Nintendo 64 controller.
Now, I'll admit that this controller doesn't hold up as well, but like there's nothing like playing Mario 64 and Zelda on this thing. Like, you can't play Mario 64 on a GameCube controller. It just doesn't make any sense. Like, this joystick is was like one of the first 3D game controllers ever, and it's excellent. I feel like this trigger, a lot of people like GoldenEye for like the way you could shoot somebody with it, and that's a really cool aspect. Rumble Pack on the back, one of the first controllers to add that. Playing Pokemon Stadium, like to have the C buttons, like which ended up turning into like the C stick for the GameCube.
Yep.
Like, in a way, like this kind of was before dual analog sticks. Like, this is such a great controller. I just wish that like the N64 wasn't as bad of a console in comparison to a lot of other consoles on this list. Like, you can play Mario Zelda. I don't know how you can play GoldenEye anymore today, but this is still an excellent controller. It had so much innovation.
Yeah, and I absolutely appreciate the controller for everything that it did for gaming. However, this would absolutely be far from my first choice for most games.
Well, that's why.
Aside from, right, like if somebody hands me Banjo-Kazooie, I don't want to play on anything else. This is it.
But if we handed you,
I need my Z button right here. I need my C sticks. I need my C buttons, whatever you want to call them. And, I mean, other than why is the D-pad all the way over here on a completely different handle?
You gotta think, there were not a lot of 2D platformers on the N64. It was all about 3D.
Right. And that's true.
It did its job. It doesn't mean it doesn't hold up as well today. But, like, it's still a great controller.
No select button.
No select button again. It's very odd. Huh, maybe Nintendo knew something we didn't.
R, L, and Z, though. They like Z buttons.
Hey, it works.
Number 9.
The NES controller.
NES controller is literally, this right here is my fucking childhood. This was the first console I ever had.
It's a great controller.
It is. It's the simplest thing ever, and it was all they needed.
Think about how many controllers like modeled after that with the D-pad, and how the Atari like set the joystick as a standard, and then this one was just like, nope, like, here's our D-pad, this is where you're gonna play games for a long time. A and B. That's all they needed for all their games. It's excellent. I love the design of it. Like, what doesn't have like this color or this design? Like, whenever they release the new 3DS and it has this, like, you know what it is. It's so like embedded in gaming culture. Like, it just feels so good to like play. A lot of people have this problem that it's like just a block, but like that's not a bad thing. Start, select, feel very good. I mean, yeah, it's a great controller.
Fantastic, and it does exactly what it needs to do with nothing more, nothing less.
I mean, what NES games did you play the most on it?
Super Mario Bros.
Which one? 1 or 3?
1. I think I only had 1, and I think I had Golf. Not Mario Golf, just Golf.
That game's garbage.
It is.
For the record.
But I'm pretty sure that's all I had.
See, for me, like, the NES game I played the most of was Mega Man 2 and 3, and like this just has so much precision. Like, it just felt good to use. And I felt like it was like Metroid and Zelda. Like, everything just felt perfect with this controller, and this is when you talk about classic gaming, this is what you think of. So,
agreed.
Great controller.
Number 8.
Nintendo Wii Remote Plus.
I thought when we first saw this that this was the greatest innovation in gaming of all time. Now that we've kind of grown up and realized that like motion controls isn't like that great of a thing, that doesn't change the fact that this is still incredible hardware. Like, playing Wii Sports with this thing and like even using it as an NES controller, like when you put it on its side, I mean, like, there's so much innovation in this, but it still just worked as a great controller. Like, how could you not play like an action adventure, like playing a shooter with a nunchuck attached and aiming and shooting in someone's head off in Metroid or even like Red Steel? Like, this controller is awesome. It's a shame that the Wii itself isn't that great of a console because of how much garbage was on there, and it's like, oh, you can bowl a ball, but like this controller is still excellent. And like, I kind of miss it. I won't lie. This is a great controller.
It is. I agree. And I will say that when they announced that this was a thing, the Wii Motion Plus, the stupid little attachment, I'm like, that's stupid. That's going to be a waste of money. There's no way it does anything. Then they released the controller, and I'm like, great, they just want more money. Then I got one because I used to work at a game store and got one nice and cheap, and I'm like, wow, this actually is plus. That's a real thing. This isn't like a ploy for more money. It actually worked better. It was more sensitive, and I mean, just the placement of everything was perfect. Like 1 and 2, you barely used them unless you turned it this way.
Exactly.
So they're in the perfect place. B is right by your finger. A is right by your thumb.
Man.
It's a great controller for a console that could have probably been better.
Exactly. And the nunchuck fit it really well. And like, think about like the Switch and the idea of like how that came about. It started right here. It started with Virtual Console. All that was possible with this.
Switch have a virtual console?
No, not yet.
Come on, Nintendo.
Learn from what was successful before.
I know you're watching, Miyamoto.
Great controller, regardless.
Yes, absolutely.
Number 7.
The Nintendo Switch Pro Controller.
Alright, not gonna lie, I've never actually used this controller. This is the first time I've ever held it.
This is the first time you've ever held this
first
controller?
time I've ever held it.
How's it feel?
Okay.
Oh no. This controller is excellent. This is one of the most underrated controllers ever, and it's only been out for like a couple months.
Now, I will say, I am not a fan of the staggered, or whatever you want to call that, joysticks.
It's like a 360 controller.
It is, and I'm not a fan of that controller as much as the PS4, PS3, PS2, PS1 controller.
That's fair.
But I was a Sony kid. That's just how it is. Now, I will say, I like the buttons. Nobody will ever get a D-pad like Sony.
I disagree. I think that the Switch controller has like one of the best D-pads, like most underrated D-pad in gaming right now. Oh, it's perfect.
It's great. It's not the worst thing ever.
Playing like Tetris on this or using it for your inventory in Zelda, it's great. The buttons are so much better. Like they're huge in comparison to like the Switch, like docked in, like garbage. I still am not sure about how I feel as like a shooter. Like I bet it's fine to play Splatoon on this or whatnot. But like the placement of everything on this controller just feels like ridiculously good. And this is after we got the Wii U with the garbage like Wii U Pro. Like this is what I can play anything on this. Like this feels fun to do. I can play a platformer, I can play a shooter, and it just feels excellent. I think this is one of the most underrated controllers because of its price point, and it's still fairly new and not a lot of people have played it, but like I'd play a lot of my PC games with that. This is an excellent controller.
Yeah, if somebody handed me this controller, I would not be disappointed. However, if they told me it costed $10 more than a PS4 and an Xbox One controller, I'd question it a little bit.
I disagree. There's the Amiibo reader on the front, so you don't have to pay for a separate thing to have that in there. Like this is an excellent controller, and I love where Nintendo is going with their controllers. So like, this might be a little underrated, but it's great.
Number 6.
The arcade fight stick.
You don't like this controller, but I think that this is most of my life in gaming when I was younger was off an arcade stick, and I'm specifically talking about the Capcom 3x3. Now this is an 4x4, but like light, medium, heavy joystick. This is a classic. This is as classic as it gets. An arcade stick. Like what could you hate about an arcade stick? It's simplified, or is it complicated as you need to be? Every arcade game like that shaped gaming into what it is today had to base it off some form of arcade model, and like. The only reason it's not higher is because you can't play a lot of different kinds of games on it. But the games that you could play on it, this was a perfect controller. It feels great to do. There's a reason why in fighting game tournaments you have people still using this and not a controller.
And I don't hate this controller. I just hate it for fighting games.
It's the best for fighting games.
And it's really just because I'm really shitty at it. But I will agree. Like, going to an arcade is the best. NFL Blitz, NBA Jam.
Yeah, those...
Gauntlet Legends. Like, there's so many good games that I can do on a almost said mouse and keyboard, on an arcade stick. But fighting games, I don't know what it is about fighting games. I need a D-pad. I need my buttons.
Look at this. Let me look at this one. This was based off a fighting game. Like, there's a reason why Capcom fighters all use these because they're perfect. There's a reason why in tournament play, if I need to do a combo, it's done. Like, I don't need to dick off with like the button being on the other side of the controller. This is everything's right here. Like. The arcade stick is one of the most influential parts of gaming.
I agree.
Influential.
It's great.
And like, it definitely deserves to be on this list. Now, a lot of people say it's not an actual controller. Here I am holding it in my hand. I can plug it into my console. This is a controller.
Yeah. I mean, it controls a game. By definition, it's a controller.
This is an excellent controller.
Fight me if you don't agree.
Well, not on this.
Not yet. No. I'll cry. I'll cry.
Number 5.
Nintendo GameCube Controller.
This controller, like, when I was learning how to play Smash and like play competitively, the only game I was really good at competitively at the time, I spent so much of my life learning this controller, and it's just perfect. Like for the GameCube. I'm not saying this is my favorite controller of all time, but I have probably played more games on this than most other ones. Like the joystick is so tight, and like the grooves are like they feel really good. The C stick, like it's not like there's no shooters like that. Like Resident Evil 4, you don't need to have like C sticks like that, like a 360 controller. It's just you can use it for Smash. You can use it for like your inventory. Look at the A button. Look how important this is, and like B, and like these buttons. They feel like power-ups. Like this is always gonna be your mandatory button, like your main button. L and R, they feel great. You can press them down a little bit better, like not all the way, and it will know. And then you can click it. It just fits so well in your hand. And then like the Z button for like
no reason.
I mean, no, there's a lot of reasons to it, but like for like shielding or grabbing and Smash. I mean, like the D-pad's a little small, but like it works really well as a great controller.
Yeah, D-pad was by far my least favorite thing. That I don't know why they did that, but yeah, I agree. Like the sticks are nice, the buttons are great. I don't know what it was. I never had a GameCube. Don't know why.
Fair.
I played a few games from the GameCube on a PC, but I never actually had the GameCube. But I will say I like the buttons. I like the triggers.
It's a great controller, and there's no select button, which is odd. It's just start.
That is weird.
This is classic. I mean, this is one of my favorite controllers of all time.
Absolutely classic.
Number 4.
The mouse and keyboard that we don't have.
Yeah, we don't have one.
I mean,
I
do,
have one,
but I'm not pulling it out here for this.
No.
A lot of people argued with me that the mouse and keyboard didn't belong, but like, those people are scrubs.
Again, same argument as the fight stick. It controls a game. By definition, it's a controller. I
feel like the mouse and keyboard is, like, there's a reason why people play shooters on PC over console, and it's because the mouse and keyboard is perfect controls.
Yep.
And, like, the precision, the way that you can map almost anything. You can play almost anything on a mouse and keyboard.
Yep,
and, like,
absolutely. Might be a little tough, but
yeah, you can play Super Meat Boy on it, you have fun. But, like, that, I mean, it's probably the oldest controller on this. Next to the arcade stick, this is probably the oldest one.
Yeah.
And, like, there's a reason why that it still holds up as well as it does. Every game that plays on it, like, feels perfect. Yeah, it feels precise. Like when we play Overwatch, and we have people who play on console and PC, and like I don't understand why anybody would play that game on console because that game was built for PC, and like, oh man, pulling off a headshot with a mouse and keyboard over a controller, it just feels so much better. And like, I'm a console gamer, but like, you gotta give the mouse and keyboard the respect it deserves. Think about Doom and all that other stuff.
And you will always be more accurate with a mouse. I'll always argue that. You will always be more accurate being able to move your whole arm, your whole hand, over just this tiny little thumb adjustment that you have to... It's just...
So what do you have at your... What do you have in your setup? Like, what is your actual mouse and keyboard setup?
What I wish it was my Corsair K95 that I sold so I could get a garbage Razer that I hate with a passion. The Razer
Black
Chroma,
Black Widow, which is what I have.
Yeah,
Thanks, asshole.
Same mouse, or same keyboard. I'm not a fan. I miss my Corsair.
Well, what do you use for a mouse?
My mouse is another Razer, and I miss my Anchor. Oddly enough,
Are those both Corsair? No, Anchor's a
no,
brand.
Anchor is a brand, and they're super cheap and super awesome. Buy one. I have the Razer Naga Hex as my mouse.
Okay. So I have the Black Widow, or the Chroma, the one that you insulted just now, and then I have the Death Ratter Elite, which is a great mouse.
It is.
I used to have this old StarCraft mouse that was great, but like, I gamed on that thing for as long as I can remember, and like, I mean, a mouse and keyboard. I mean, how do you play games like StarCraft without a mouse and keyboard? You can't. The Halo Wars, are you on a controller? Are you fucking kidding me? No. The mouse and keyboard is one of the greatest controllers ever. And it always will be. It will never go away.
Absolutely.
Number 3.
The Super Nintendo controller.
My favorite console of all time.
Same.
Is the Super Nintendo.
Almost.
And like, we wanted to put this at number 1 so bad. But like, we just, like, you can't play every game on it. Like, I understand. For its time, this is by far one of the greatest controllers of all time. And like, this D-pad is perfect.
Yep.
Think of all the excellent games on the Super Nintendo that like this D-pad took advantage of. Start, select, classic. LR added that to controllers, not this Sega Genesis ABC. Like, and then the most important thing was it added X and Y. And like the way, think about every single controller ever made since has this. Like, this is one of the most influential controllers of all time. It feels great. Like, when you buy a knockoff on like Amazon for your like PC, just it's not the same. Like, this is, I personally think that this is one of the, like, this, I would like to have this at number 1. Like, this controller is just perfect. I
would almost like to have it at number 1, but somebody did make a better D-pad. I'm just saying.
We'll get to that.
Right. But yeah, I completely agree. And even the original Nintendo got a controller that looked kind of like this towards the end of its generation. And even a top-loader console. But that's irrelevant. I mean, they clearly saw that they could make a change, make something better, and they did it. And I think this is a perfect example of innovating off of old hardware.
I agree. It doesn't hurt as well that, like, it's the controller to the greatest console ever made. So
Second greatest.
This is the greatest console ever made.
Second greatest.
Well, we'll get to that.
Number 2.
Xbox 360 controller.
Alright, so I have like the most unpopular opinion in that this is not my favorite controller.
Oh, this almost got my vote. This is one of my favorite controllers of all time.
I don't hate it. I don't love it. I don't...
Let me explain what makes this controller excellent. First of all, the PS3 controller in comparison is garbage in comparison. This controller is like, aside from the D-pad, this controller is perfect. And this is why. And a lot of those games that, like, when you use the 360 controller for like 2D platformers, this joystick is so tight and it's so responsive. Like when you play Super Meat Boy, you don't need a D-pad. This is perfect. The buttons that are concave like this, they feel good to hit. The triggers are the best triggers possibly ever. Like, just like, this is the best controller for shooters ever, and then nothing will ever top this controller for being the best. Like, how many people don't use mouse and keyboard on PC? They use a 360 controller. Like, it works so well. I love like how heavy it feels. It feels just right. The left and right bumpers feel really good. The joysticks are literally perfect. It looks odd. Like, I know, like, looking at it, it looks like it's misplaced, but this is perfect. Even the D-pad, like, this is one of the older ones, but they had a newer one where you can twist it and make it tighter or looser, and, like...
It still didn't make it better.
I think it did.
It made it better. That's wrong. It did make it better.
And you gotta think, this was before the PS3 and the Wii. This button, there was a home button now. This is the first controller to do this properly. And, like, I think it's almost got my vote. This is one of the greatest controllers ever, and, like, I couldn't imagine playing any of my playing BioShock or Mass Effect or Halo on anything else.
I did it.
It's too good. This is a perfect controller.
And it is. It's a good controller. I agree. But my biggest flaws, D-pad, awful for fighting games.
I played Street Fighter on the joystick and it was fine. And like the precision that joystick has is like extremely underrated. This is one of the greatest controllers because like you could play anything on it. And when PC games continue to get more and more complex, this will be able to play them all perfectly.
Absolutely.
So, it's the best.
Number 1.
The DualShock 4 Sony controller.
Oh my god, this is my favorite fucking controller of all time.
It's up there for me too. Like next to the Super Nintendo, this is probably my favorite controller. Do you remember back in 2013 when we first you bought one? We were at GameStop for Batman Arkham Origins release. And you whipped it out of the casing, and we were just like, "Whoa!"
Yep. The joysticks are the best. The D-pad has been the best since the PlayStation 1. As soon as they broke these buttons up, just like that, this D-pad has been the best fucking D-pad. Buttons are great. Not a big fan of the options and share, I will admit.
You only use those like
only because of how many times I've accidentally hit share when I didn't want to. But nothing's perfect.
I like how the touchpad on the bit is like a giant start button for everything, and then you can use it for something if you want to. The light up, like I was playing Last of Us, and then like when I was dying, it started blinking red, but when I was fine, it was green, and that was awesome. The triggers,
and don't forget the new update where the light shows up on the touchpad too, on the newer controllers.
That's why I have on one of my red one. But like the triggers, like they looked so stupid when we saw them. We saw this thing when they revealed it, and was like, what the fuck is this? Man, were we unaware that
it's incredible.
The buttons all feel good. The speaker, people forget that there's a speaker in the controller, like the Wii remote, and like when you play Transistor, it will talk to you and it'll only come through this and like
Yep.
the light up. You can't do that with an Xbox One controller. You can't do that with a Switch controller or a Wii U. Like,
Yep,
this is
there's-
the greatest controller in gaming. The way it feels in your hands, the way it's curved, like...
Yeah, it's fantastic. And if you don't agree, fight me, because don't, actually. But it is. It's a great controller. And L1R1, fantastic.
Oh, yeah. I hate the PS3 controller, and I think that this one was just like, this is what we deserved.
And right, and
PS3.
it's just like NES to Super Nintendo. This was a massive improvement over old hardware.
I don't understand how they're going to get any better than this. Like, the PS4 DualShock 4 is the greatest controller of all time.
Maybe we'll see next year when the PS5 comes out.
That's not going to happen next year.
We'll see.